You never really forget your first movie. It sets a standard, it helps define your taste, and you can only hope that when you revisit it years later, it holds up. For me, that was a film known as Braveheart. Released on May 24, 1995, Braveheart tells the tale of William Wallace, a leader during the First War of Scottish Independence from England. Directed and starring Mel Gibson, the movie won 5 Academy Awards and became shorthand and parody for inspiration all through the early 2000s that really showcased its impact. But Irving, this movie isn't historically accurate. Look, I ain't no stinking historian. Hell, if there's 3 things I'm trash at, it's history, geography, and math ever since they started throwing letters in there. No, I'm not here to defend its inaccuracies. I rocked with Apocalypto and I ain't even salty about its historical inaccuracies with my people. And with that many awards, it doesn't really need me defending it as a masterpiece and Mel Gibson's best movie. Which it is, fight me the Patriot fans. No, I'm here to really ask, why is this so great, why is this still relevant, and how do its non-historical problems age to the modern day? Put on your war paint, toss out that history book, and let's get rolling. Sound design is one of those things that ideally you won't notice at all. Its whole purpose is immersion, so if it stands out, it's either really nonsensically done or highlights elements of the world that tell a tale. What I mean by this is not the sound effects like the Wilhelm scream or the roaring fires of Zorro, but the smaller details that are naturally baked into the world and edited for subtle effect. The subtle clanking of armor and chainmail from English soldiers and lords add weight to their presence, and it helps illustrate how the Scottish will only have their wits, their will, and their courage as an advantage. Every fleet of horses rides in like a thunderstorm, really lending to the idea that in the 13th century, this was as close as you had to a tank, and this was before 3D technology, yet it creates that sense like you yourself are about to be mowed down. And of course, medieval war epic. If you can't get the clanking of swords, shields, and the sound of men being sliced up by the dozens right, then don't make the movie at all. Luckily, Braveheart put care not just into its war visuals, but the sounds as well, toeing the line between a chaotic mess of adrenaline rush and a clean tool of storytelling, letting you know if the characters on the screen that you actually care about are prevailing or not. One really impressive thing is that I can't find a single weak link in the entirety of the cast. I can understand the reason why historians have issues with this movie when I look at the acting. Every scene is done with such sincerity and believability that it firmly places you in the belief that these people's lives are actually at risk, that these stakes are real, and not just, people acting on screen. It's that kind of acting that causes people to take this movie as a firm truth. And look, Mel Gibson is a problematic madman now. Back then he wasn't, and his face will always be recognizable. And it really speaks volumes of this movie if you can forget that it's him and you only see William Wallace. It might be because this is one of the earliest films I have to memory, but in my opinion, this was the career-defining role for him. Every character feels like they're treated as the main protagonist considering how much care and talent is put to each role, especially Robert the Bruce and King Edward. And look, I'll be honest with you, before writing this up, I could never remember any of these actors' names because they embodied the characters so well, didn't seem important. But bruh, Brendan Gleeson, who played Hamish, is also Mad-Eye Moody in Harry Potter? I tried to hold off on saying this, but if you have never seen Braveheart, you should know up front that it is a 3-hour movie. That being said, it doesn't actually feel like a 3-hour movie. I've seen this movie countless times, and I've always tried to see what could have been removed, and honestly, I can't find anything. There is this principle known as Chekhov's gun, stating that every element that is introduced in a story needs to be relevant. To simplify it further, if you put on a play, and you place a gun on the table during said play, the gun must be used eventually. Otherwise, it must be removed because it's irrelevant. Every element of Braveheart is crucial to its world and character building. If I really try to force it, I could cut down some slower scenes, but then I'd be robbing them of their suspense, and that'd be robbing the audience of the experience of how high these stakes are. If anything, I take issue in one scene where Nicolette tells Princess Isabella of France an event that takes place off screen. Movies should show, not tell, But even then I can't hold it against Braveheart, seeing as I had to cut something to stay just under 3 hours. Bruh, let me tell you, Braveheart is easily in my top 3 scores of all time. You know James Horner pulled up in an orchestra like The Rock pulling up at WrestleMania and just laid it the fuck down. I have a small collection of vinyl, and Braveheart is essential to me even owning a record player. A truly brilliant score can be played without the movie and still evoke such emotion. If you were to remove the dialogue from this movie and just leave the score, the emotional gist would still hit. But this man didn't just say, let's make some absolute bangers, let's make them fit in the world, and put bagpipes on the main songs on this soundtrack on some mask off shit. You make a movie's theme memorable by sprinkling it over the whole score and tweaking it to the needs of each scene, just enough to make it unique, yet keeping you at the core of why you even care. I really wish I knew more about music to tell you why the Braveheart score is the most excellent element in a classic crafted with finely tuned instruments, but all I can tell you is that this bitch slapped in 95, it still does today, and James Horner, RIP, is one of the GOATs right up there with Hans Zimmer. Fight me. And look, I'm not gonna lie to you, this movie is not perfect. No movie is. Except Rocky IV. You're perfect, baby, I love you. And considering this movie was made 25 years ago, our tolerance and ideas of things have changed as well. With acting and directing, a case can be made that this is just Mel Gibson unzipping his pants and parading his manhood around for 3 hours. It defines manhood and machismo as bravery, wit, strength, and revenge, but never compassion. When they take the city of York, we could have done with a scene of Wallace showing compassion to the innocents of the war by caring for them or letting them go elsewhere, but we only ever celebrate the violence, the outsmarting, the revenge. It paints manhood as a competition and leaves no room for gentleness outside of loving a woman, which leads to the other issue. Its portrayal of its only 2 gay characters. The film portrays Prince Edward and Philip as conniving, smug, and obsessed with appearance over actual duty. It leans heavily into its stereotypes with the body language and the makeup, and seems really hell-bent on making them feel like the most pathetic characters. And this isn't just them, pretty much anyone who isn't a straight male gets the short end of the stick in this movie. Murn, Nicolette, and Princess Isabella of France have no motivation in this world outside of romance. It's especially an issue with the princess, as her empathy and generosity is hinted at, but she never takes actions to help those she's meant to rule, and her one action of giving money to the victims of the war is undercut by her really just giving it to Wallace because she's thirsty for that boy. When we're first introduced to William Wallace, he's a lively boy who dreams of heroics and is eager to fight alongside his father and prove himself. But when he returns to Scotland a grown man, he has given that up, refusing to meet with the rebels, only wanting a peaceful life and to take care of him and his own. This isn't selfishness, this is reality. What difference could one single Scotsman make in a giant war like this? William Wallace is portrayed as a mirror. As children, we have a simplistic idea of justice in action. We believe with all our hearts and are set on living through those beliefs. As we grow older, the compromises begin. We see the world through aged eyes, feel defeated, and take our victories when we can get them. To live simply, to take care of ourselves and loved ones, to die old. These are the victories of the common man. When the possibility of that is taken from him, he returns to his heart of a child. In a vision after his father's death, his father had told him,
"Your heart is free. Have the courage to follow it."
His rebellion quickly snowballs into a revolution, and he gains an uncompromising love for his country, and that his fellow men be afforded what he was not. His courage and drive inspires everyone around him. He is offered lands, titles, and money, but he will not compromise, because he knows what is right and irreplaceable is the freedom of his country. We are inspired by William Wallace as his countrymen are. We want to be like him. We want to be that brave and strong, to be that unyielding and inspiring and righteous in the face of unsurmountable odds. But we're not William Wallace. We're Robert the Bruce. Whether it be through our own making of ourselves or our well-intentioned parents to make sure we are without wanting in this world, we are taught to compromise wisely. Robert the Bruce holds claim to the throne of Scotland, along with titles, lands, and riches passed down to him through his father. His father teaches him to play both sides, to survive this war, and that there is no wisdom in joining the side that is slaughtered. If he makes the wrong choice here, he sacrifices his entire family name. But there's a deep sadness in his eyes. Every time we see him, there's just this emptiness, this hollowness, like a man trying to find himself. He admires William Wallace and how men fight for him out of inspiration, not because of the consequences if they do not. We see a man who is trying to survive with what he has, but the price of survival has been selling his heart and his beliefs. There is a respect between the two, and an admiration as one man sees who he wants to be, and another sees he might not be alone in what is right. And when the sorrow becomes too much to bear, we see Robert the Bruce find his belief again.
They fought for William Wallace, and he fights for something that I've never had. And I took it from him when I betrayed him, and I saw it in his face on the battlefield. And it's tearing me apart.
All men betray. All lose heart.
I don't want to lose heart! I want to believe, as he does.
Through torture, as he is being pushed to beg for mercy and to end suffering, even in the face of death, William Wallace does not yield. With his final breath echoing for a cry for freedom, he's executed. William Wallace the man dies, but William Wallace the legend lives on. We see an army of the men he inspired, led by a man he showed how to have courage to follow his heart. In one final rattling battle cry, William's sword flies through the air, showing us how even though he's dead, he lived and died as freely as his sword, Braveheart, soaring through the sky, and how his words rang true. We may not live perfect, untroubled lives without compromise, but we will live freely in holding on to what is right. Your heart can be free. You just have to find the courage to follow it.